We are up and running. Let's see if I can find us on here real quick. There we are. Okay. Well, as of right now, live, I'm the only one that's online. Oh, no. Now my brother just came in. But we only have Sanders online. But I know that people watch this later as a recording, and so they don't want to sit around, and they want to hear what's going on today. Anybody got any birthdays? Y'all want to say happy birthday to anybody? No? No birthdays today? Well, I've got a few for you. It is, it's kind of a slow day, but we're going to extend it a little bit, I think. I think we'll be able to, because part of it is kind of interesting, I do think. So, on this date, it is December the 11th, 2024. We have a few birthdays to celebrate today. I've only got 3, and one of them you may not care anything about. It really is more personal, I guess, than not really personal, but in my experience, in the realm of my experience is why I bring it up. But the first one is on this date in 1757, Charles Wesley was born. Y'all know who Charles Wesley is?
Yeah. One of the founders of the United Methodist Church.
Sort of, but not really.
Charles and, what's his brother?
John.
John Wesley.
John was really the main impetus there. And so here's a little bit of trivia for you. John really did not want to establish a new denomination. He had no interest. In fact, he was vehemently opposed to doing that. He was out of the Church of England. He was Anglican, and he remained that way till he died. He never called himself anything other than an Anglican. And I don't know if I guess priest. Were they priests? Pastor? Whatever they called him. He was that until he died. And the only way that Charles got wrapped up in that is because he was looking for some other preachers to help him spread the message that he had. His main thing, kind of like Luther really didn't want to start a Protestant Reformation. He simply wanted the Catholic Church to get it right. And so that was, when he started everything out, he wasn't trying to do anything other than to purify the church. And so that's what John wanted. And so he got some other guys in to help him out. Charles was one of those, his brother, but he was no more important to the starting of the Methodist denomination than other pastors that John recruited to send his message out. What Charles is really more well known for, honestly, is his hymn writing. He wrote a lot of hymns. Does anybody know of any that he wrote? Anybody have any? I have a Baptist hymnal there just to make some of you old timers all get the warm and fuzzies. Okay, so anybody know of any that he wrote?
Can I Google?
No, you can't Google. What are you talking about? There'll be several that you'll recognize. There's a ton of them because he was a prolific writer. But a few of them made it into the Baptist hymnal. One of them was "Blessed Be the Name," "Blessed be the name." And it's so funny when people, let me just make some of y'all mad. It's so funny when people give a hard time to praise music writers for repeating themselves. And all I can go through my mind when somebody says that is, "Blessed be the name, blessed be the name, blessed be the name of the Lord." Let's do that again. Blessed be the name. Same thing. So anyway, but he wrote that. Let's see here. What? For 1,000 tongues to sing. Okay, y'all know that one. Christ the Lord has risen today. He wrote that. And then a couple that we will be singing or you'll hear quite often around us at this time of year is "Come Thou Long Expected Jesus." Dum, 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 dum. And then probably the best known, at least in my experience, would be Hark the Herald Angels Sing. So he wrote that one.
That's one of my
So,
favorites.
yeah. So anyway, prolific writer. He was born on this date in 1757. He died in 1834.
And they founded what in Savannah? Wesley Monumental.
Okay. All right. Good. And it's funny because Charles left John because John. So here's the thing about John. Another thing that's interesting, at least to me, because it's so relatable, is that he really was on the outs with his church. His church did not grow very well, and the reason is that he was frustrated with his congregants because they weren't living the Christian life on a regular basis. And they were frustrated with him because they couldn't figure out why he wasn't just satisfied with their attendance at church on Sunday morning. And I thought, doesn't that sound familiar? But anyway. So Charles, because things weren't going well, Charles up and left. He went back to England for a while. So anyway, interesting story. And the only reason John didn't go back is not because he thought he could, not because he was encouraged by anything, it's because he was too stubborn. And he was going to make it work. And then they ended up asking him to leave. So, yeah. Interesting story. On this date in 1889, happy birthday to Walter Knott, Knott. If you've ever been to Los Angeles, South LA, whatever, Knott's Berry Farms, it's an amusement park. Yeah, he's the one who created that. Knott's Berry Farm out in there. And I drove by there. In fact, I pulled up into the parking lot. We didn't go when we were out there for the convention a couple of years ago. We didn't go there, but we just wanted to say that we had been. So we drove in the parking lot. It was like dark. Nobody was there. But anyway. And then you will really appreciate this time of year. This date in 1944, Brenda Lee.
Yes.
Rocking around the Christmas tree?
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. And it was so funny because when I walked in my house at lunchtime to change to go to the gym, that song was on the TV. And I was like, Jennifer, it was her birthday. It would have been her birthday today. In fact, she's still alive. She's still alive, isn't she? I don't think she's dead. But anyway.
My mama had birthday today.
Today? Oh, okay.
It was today.
Okay. Very cool. But you know that Brenda Lee, that was not her original name. Her real name was Brenda Mae Tarpley. And just for fun, do you know where she was born? It was not Savannah.
Augusta.
Nope. She was born in Atlanta. Yeah. So she's a Georgia native. All right. Those are all the birthdays. I only got 3 birthdays, but I knew that we would drag those out because I wanted to talk about Charles Wesley. I got 1 death for today, just because I thought that it's something that should matter to us. Henry van Zutphen. He was Dutch, but he was the first Lutheran martyr. So, because back then to be a reformer was a dangerous position to be in. And so he identified with the Lutherans, and he was put to death. He was burned at the stake in Brussels on this date in 1524. But that's all the deaths I've got. A few things that happened on this date that I thought might be of interest. It was on this date in 1620 that the Mayflower Pilgrims came ashore at Plymouth Bay. Y'all may not care about this, but I'm on here and my brother's on here, so we care. 1934, the National League voted to allow night games. Baseball. We're talking baseball. Allow night games, and now they're all night games just about. It's odd to have a day game now. But the funny thing is when they allowed that back in 1934, they allowed up to 7 night games. So anyway, on this date in 1941, Germany and Italy declared war against the United States. So we were pulled deeper into that, I guess, on an official basis. 1980. It was on this date in 1980 that Magnum P.I. premiered on CBS. And now Tom Selleck, they're closing down Blue Bloods. This is the last season for Blue Bloods, but he's still at it. And we're talking 40, 44 years later. Sheesh. But
Pretty handsome old guy.
yep. So my wife tells me. But anyway,
So you agree.
well, I didn't say I agreed, but I've just been told that. 1981, the next year, Muhammad Ali fought his last fight. So, just for fun, does anybody happen to know who he fought against? Because I know y'all are boxing enthusiasts, at least on this side of the room. No, he fought Trevor Burbick, who, yeah, no, he wasn't. I mean, he's not really well known right now, but it was like within the next decade that Tyson destroyed him in quick fashion. But anyway, and do you happen to know what number fight? How many fights did he fight? Anybody know? Was all said and done?
162.
Oh my goodness, 162. Man, no wonder he ended up like he was. No, he ended up like he was because of Frazier. But no, it was the 61st and final fight. And that's not just a few when you're talking about the heavyweight division. But anyway, he lost by unanimous decision. It was in Nassau, Bahamas. This date in 2008, it was when Bernie Madoff was arrested for his $50 billion Ponzi scheme. So I hope he thought it was worth it. And then y'all remember the game on your phone, Angry Birds? Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
So it was released on this date in 2009. It was actually produced in Finland, but it was released internationally on this date in 2009. So, anyways, and they say that your phone, I know I'm spending too much time on this. They say that your phone is worth a lot of money if you have the original on your phone because they don't do it anymore. You can't download it anymore. So yeah, if you got a phone with Angry Birds on it, go try to sell that bad boy. All right, one last thing. And y'all don't care anything about this. I wish that my daughter was watching. And sometimes she does pull up. I see her name pull up on here. But it was on this date in 2014, 10 years ago, that I went to Cookout for the very first time. So it showed up on my memories and Facebook. And the reason that it is special is not just because, I mean, like, what's the big deal about Cookout? But I was with Madison. It was just her and me. I was taking her to a basketball game. We were on our way back from a basketball game when she played basketball. And we stopped there. She had heard of it. I had never even heard of it. We stopped there. And I liked it. So anyway, just her and me. I got a picture of it on Facebook and all that. So that's my girl. So by now, I can't believe I'm going to say this word. I immediately texted her husband. Oh, wow. My son-in-law. And because I told her, I said, I'm going to go get a milkshake in your honor. So I'm going to be doing that tonight. I'm going to get a milkshake in her honor. And she said, bring me one. So I texted him immediately and I said, don't tell her, but take her one. So she should have it by now. But anyway.
That's sweet.
And yes, I Venmo'd him so that it actually came from me. Okay, he did not pay for it. But anyway.
You're such a good daddy.
All right, well, she's my sweetheart. Okay, well, gosh, I spent a lot of time on that, didn't I? Open up your Bibles. I don't think this will take a long time, not as long as you're going to want it to take, honestly. Honestly, and I don't even say that jokingly. But because we're in Revelation chapter 13, and there are a few things that we want to say. We won't say too much, but there are a few things that we want to say before we look at this passage. We say that we have this saying that we love to throw out there because it has come from the world. It has totally come, the impetus for it has come from the world, the way that we use it. And we like to use the words of Jesus, judge not lest you be judged. We throw that out there because nobody wants anybody to point out anybody else's sin. And
That's what a lot of people try to use to get out of going to jury duty.
oh, is it really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, funny. I hadn't really thought about that. Use it in a civic discourse. But that is not the way that Jesus used it. In fact, in its very context, in was that Matthew chapter 7? It's chapter 7, right? Not 6, it's 7. In its very context, he immediately follows that verse up by talking about judging people. So you really got to be careful how you use it. You also got to be careful about how you judge people. I'm not saying that at all. But there's a passage that John uses, and John would have probably been, the Apostle John, would have probably been the most mellow out of all them because he was the disciple that Jesus loved, and he talked a lot about love in his gospel and in his epistles. And here's what he said, 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. He said, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many prophets have gone out into the world." Now, can you really say anything that is more blatantly judgmental? Test the spirits to see whether or not they are from God. He is saying, and in this context, he is talking specifically, when he's talking about testing the spirits, he's talking about those prophets who have gone out into the world who are saying that they are from God. And you need to judge them to make sure that they are. And then if you read through, and I'm going to make a sweeping statement, and I thought about it really too late for me to go and to verify this, and so I'm going to say this with the possibility of sticking my foot in my mouth. If any of you want to go and challenge this and study this, I will be more than happy to retract it at any point in time that you figure this out. But I would say that every book in the New Testament, except for maybe Titus, no, not even Titus, except for maybe Philemon, that they all have some passage that talks about false teaching and false prophets. It is a major issue in the Bible. And yet we don't make a whole lot of it. We are uncomfortable when one preacher calls another preacher out. And because I've had people tell me that. And you know, we may not personally like certain preachers or that kind of thing, but we don't really want to make a big deal about it. And yet the New Testament makes a big deal about it. And so we've got to be careful who we listen to and who we set up on pedestals. And, well, but you know what I mean. Before we raise somebody else up and say, man, they're really good. Because today the benchmark for good preachers today and the ones who are carrying the biggest churches. And here's the word that's out there, because this is my field, okay? And so I hear it all the time. We no longer really deal with preachers as much as we do communicators. That's the word that's out there. And if people are good communicators, they have a big audience and they get a lot of applause and a lot of following, and they sell their books, and you know, people want to pull them up on their podcasts and all that kind of stuff because they're good communicators. And then you know, if they preach a good sermon that's funny or attention grabbing or attention keeping, that kind of interesting. Let's say that interesting. These are the people that people value the most. The preachers that people value the most. And I think that philosophy is exposed in several places in the New Testament, but especially in the passage that we're going to look at tonight. Because we're going to look at the false prophet. And we talk about the beast and the Antichrist and all that, but we could also talk about the beast, the false prophet. And the thing about it is, you know how, and we said this when we talked about the Antichrist the first time, it may not have been when we got to, I can't remember if we talked about it when we got to chapter 13 here, but we did when we were talking about him in chapter 7, I think. No, yeah, isn't it? No. Where were we? I'm getting there. Hold on. Maybe it's when we talked about it in chapter 11, when we talked about the Antichrist. That the spirit of Antichrist was present in the New Testament, in New Testament times. The spirit of Antichrist is already here and among us. And there will be antichrists, the Bible talks about. And it will culminate in the Antichrist that we think of when we talk about the Antichrist. Well, the Bible is also very specific in telling us that there are false prophets, and they are in the churches, and they were invading the churches, and they're in the world, and all that kind of stuff. But they are precursors to the false prophet that all of them will culminate in this particular guy. And the things that we value in a preacher nowadays, I'm sorry, and I don't mean that is a sweeping, generalized statement, and I don't mean to pin y'all in there with it, okay? I don't mean that. So I need to think of a different way to say it. But that people at large, even within the church culture, I mean, what they value, he will be the premier of those, okay? So let's just, I guess, have I said everything I want to say? So let's look in and see what he says, or what it says about him. In verse 11, Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. Now, let's just stop there real quick, because we need to look at the word another. And here's why. Because when we're talking about the false prophet, there are some people who believe that that this false prophet is going to be like an ideology, or maybe a movement or something along those lines that will push people toward the Antichrist. But when it says another, the word another here means another of the same kind. In other words, it's another beast like we were introduced to in verse 1. So that if Antichrist is a person, and how can you doubt that it's a person when you read the description of him? That would mean that the false prophet is going to be a person also, because it's another of the same kind. So we have another beast who comes up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. So, again, we'll stop here for a moment, and I will confess to you that I am not 100% sure about these horns, because we looked at the horns in verse 1. We looked at the horns back in chapter 12, and we said that these were nations, and it simply meant that they were in charge of the nations. And I'm inclined to believe that the false prophet would have leadership among these nations also. And if he didn't have a position where he was the head, he was at least the de facto head. He was the one who actually ran these two nations. But it is also possible that he is trying to set him up as, you've seen a lamb with the two horns, the two little horns, the cute little thing, prancing around and all that kind of stuff. That he would be kind of like that. He would be a lovable individual. And he would seem to be harmless. Okay, that's the word that we want to look at, is harmless. So I don't know which one of those it is for certain. Again, I would tend to lean toward, because of the context, I would tend to lean toward the fact that he is a national leader as well, and he's going to point people to the Antichrist and say, hey, follow this guy, I'm following this guy, you follow this guy with me. That would be my tendency, but I could see where somebody would simply say, oh, he's harmless. He's a harmless guy, and we need to listen to him because of some of the things he's going to do, and look at how sweet he is. Look at how, could a guy this nice really be as bad as what y'all are saying? Okay? So he's got two horns like a lamb and spoke as a dragon. He exercises all authority of the first beast in his presence. Now listen, here's his main objective. He makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast whose fatal wound was healed. So there again we have this reference to a fatal wound. Again, another reason that I believe that the Antichrist is going to die, come back to life. Also, look at verse 13. He, the false prophet, performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. And again, these signs, hey, maybe it's just Maybe he's just fooling people because magic is a big thing now. You know, watch America's Got Talent. And all these people who do things, and when they get finished doing it, you're like, what? No way. How on the earth did he do that? But speaking of that, if you want to think about that, America's Got Talent, those judges who are up there, who are judging them, I've heard them say several occasions, I really believe that magic is real. Like it's not just an illusion. They believe that that kind of thing exists. Because it does. The Bible shows us that it does. In fact, Acts chapter 8. Am I remembering this? What is up with Lane remembering something? Acts chapter 8. If you want to turn back there, you can. You don't have to. Acts chapter 8. Let's see before I make a big deal about it. Oh, yeah. Verse 9. Acts chapter 8, verse 9. Listen to this. Now there was a man named Simon. This is not Peter, okay, and not the other apostle either. Who formerly was practicing magic in the city and astonishing the people of Samaria, claiming to be someone great. And they all, from smallest to greatest, were giving attention to him, saying, and here's what they were saying about him: this man is what is called the great power of God. And they were giving him attention because he had for a long time astonished them with his magic arts. This is who Philip came and exposed. So, here's the thing. Again, I know I've repeated myself, but we got some people online, some people in this room, maybe you didn't hear me say it before. But just because somebody can do great signs and wonders and perform what is actually a miracle, it does not mean that they're from God. That's what the people thought here in the book of Acts. They thought that, hey, he must be from God because he can do these things. That's what people still say today, and that is not true. It depends on where the source is from. And Satan is powerful, and he can empower people to do things that we cannot do in and of ourselves. He can empower them to do stuff supernaturally. So yeah. So the issue is not what do they do, it's how do they live, what it is that they are preaching and teaching and saying. How are they influencing people? And those are the things that we really look for. And then if they can do great signs on top of that, hey, yay, go team. So look at verse 14. Here's what happens then when he does that. He deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs. And here he is again, remember, because of the signs which it was given him to perform. People are influenced because they see somebody do something that's very cool. In the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. Again, another reference. Dead, alive again. So he's saying, look at what happened in his life. Can somebody grab that door? I appreciate it. Thank you. So they're like, hey, this guy, man, he was dead and now he's alive. Follow this guy, you know. Y'all follow Jesus, follow him, you know. So yeah, he's using these miracles as a platform to point people toward the Antichrist. It was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. So here's the thing. Here's a twist, man. I mean, things are just getting worse and worse and worse. In the Old Testament, one of the big things that you see, and it really is kind of funny in some places, is the mockery that God's people, and even the prophets of God, put upon people who are following idols. And they're like, those idols can't even talk. Why are you following them? That's so ridiculous. And all that. And so we see that oftentimes, and it's true, you know. But here, in the end times, there will be people who will be mocking, and all of a sudden, they'll be able to talk. These images that are just gold, silver, wood, they will actually speak. Because the beast is able to perform that kind of a miracle. And so people are going to be wowed by that. And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so the image of the beast would speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He's going to then kill people who choose to. And that's why Jesus said, man, you people got to run, man. Remember when he talked about that in Matthew chapter 24? Run, save yourself. Don't turn back and get your coat. Don't go back to turn out the lights. Don't do any of that kind of stuff. Get out of Dodge, because you will die for your faith if you don't do that. And so, if they don't worship, they will die. Kind of like, you remember Nebuchadnezzar made that decree? Daniel, chapter 3, I think it was. 6, where was it? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you know? You don't bow down and worship, you die. Same declaration. So he calls us all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the free and the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on the right hand or on their forehead. And he provides that no one will be able to buy or sell. So we're talking about the mark of the beast. We've heard that. That's the phrase. There are books after that, movies, all that kind of stuff. Songs, that kind of thing. He provides that, and here's why that's so important. No one will be able to buy or to sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. So the clamps will be put down on people who do not get this mark. Can you imagine having to live your life without being able to buy or sell anything? It's hard enough. People think in our world today, you hear, and I'm not advocating whether or not you should do this or whatever, but what's the financial guy? Why am I not thinking of his name? Yeah, Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey says don't do credit. Don't buy anything on credit. You don't need credit. You don't have to worry about building up your credit because you don't buy anything on credit. Don't do it. That's his advocation. Now, some people say, well, you gotta have credit. You gotta have some, whatever you believe. But my point is people reject what he's saying because they think that you cannot survive in a culture without credit or without living on some kind of credit. And here, it's not even about credit. It's about your money is no good whatsoever. You can't go to Walmart and buy stuff with cash. You can't use your debit card. You can't use Apple Pay. You can't use any of that in this day. Nothing. You either got to grow it yourself, kill it yourself, or steal it. That's the only choices you're going to have. It would be hard to live in that kind of a society, and that's the society that will be created. There will be some kind of controlled credit, and I don't know what that's going to look like. I think that when you're talking about Venmo and Apple Pay and those kind of things, you look at a government-run system of something along those lines. Right now, it's free. Not free. I mean, you got to pay for it, but it's free to be used. Okay, but if it's a controlled system like that, and that's the only way that you can function, that is kind of what it's looking like here. So we can certainly, I'd like to think if you understand that electronic kind of system, you can at least see how we're moving toward that. And what now?
Very easy.
Yeah. It's just one step. Government steps in, they close down the systems that are there, and they open their own and demand this is the only way that you can do it. Or I guess there's probably going to be a black market, but it's just going to be difficult. And so if you're not dying, if you're not getting killed, you're being squeezed, it's just going to be a tight system. So that's the mark of the beast that everyone is going to be forced to take on, or there will be consequences. So we get to verse 18, and man, here's where it gets to flying, right? Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. Now, this is fun. This is a fun discussion to have, because normally what happens when you get to this point is people want answers. They want answers about 666, okay? And if you ever play like gin rummy or whatever, you try to collect sixes. Oh, you can't do that, but this will be very unsatisfying for you if that's what you're after. There have been countless volumes written, and speculations, and conferences, and all that, trying to, or in their minds, thinking that they have pinpointed what exactly does this mean. Well, we've already said that everybody's going to be marked, because in chapter 7, when you had the 144,000, they were marked, right? They were marked with the mark of God. And here we have those who are marked with the mark of the beast, which again is Satan emulating God. That's all he does. He has nothing original about him, except for evil. And so they will be forced to get this mark of Satan, and we know that it will be obvious, but we don't really know what form it's going to take. Is it going to be those 6 numbers? Is it going to be a chip? People talk about that chip that's coming around. Your dogs already have it, and now they're offering it to people. It's voluntary right now, but is that going to be the mark of the beast? And people have speculated all kinds of things about who the beast might be because of this number 666. And the funniest one that I've heard, you probably heard some different ones, and there have been a lot of people who are very, very serious about things, and it sounded like it could be credible. But the one that always got me was going back all the way back to the 80s. People said that Ronald Reagan was the Antichrist because each of his 3 names had 6 letters in it. Like, is that the best we can come up with? That's the most intellectual that we can get. And here's a fun one too. I'd already heard this, but it kind of made me laugh. I was in line at the Walmart market there on White Bluff, and I was getting an Alani. Yes, shoot me if you want to. An Alani. It's an energy drink, but it's not bad like Monsters and all that kind of stuff. But I was getting one of those, and I was looking at the cooler where they were located, and right above that on the table, on the shelf above that, were the Monsters. Okay, you know what Monsters are? Have y'all seen the logo for the Monster? It's an M, and it's a jaggedy M. Well, somebody came up with this thing that in Hebrew, one of those claw marks was very similar to the Hebrew number 6. And so there were 3 of them. And so it was 666. And so Monsters had something to do with the Antichrist, and the company was a terrible company. They were satanic or whatever. Y'all, the mark of the beast is not an energy drink. Okay? It's not that. Let's not kid ourselves. It's going to be something that is much more serious. It's going to be something that is much more central to our existence on planet Earth. I don't know what it is, and neither does anybody else. But I will say this, that in this day, John wrote this in such a way that it is going to be obvious to those who are alive during the tribulation. That part I do know. But I think it is something that it very well could be, just like we can see, these League of Nations that are coming together that could form the world government. Like we just said, the system of payments that could be taken over by the government and could be a cashless society, like what the end time is going to be. We might see the seeds of the mark of the beast right now, but we can't know that that's what it is. Does that make sense? We can't really make sense of it right now, and so it's really kind of, even though I've spent about 5 minutes talking about it now, it's really kind of futile for us to try to guess what it is at this point. We can't know. But it will be obvious in its day. Whether that day is a year from today, or a month from today, or 1,000 years from today, it will be obvious in that time. Okay? So I'm sorry that's unsatisfying. I know people want better answers than that and all that, but I'm just trying to be true to what's here, and that's as true as I can get. But it does point out one thing that is worth us noting, and he calls that number that it is the number is that of a man, and more than just is what men came up with. Be careful before you get into too much numerology. I'm not a numerologist. I think you can get into some pretty serious mess when you play with numerology, but it is pretty well understood that 7 is a holy number and 6 is the number that is used to represent the number of man because it falls one step short. It always falls short of the glory of God. And so, and then it's used, and again, so is the number actually 666 a number of like 3 different numbers, 666? Or is it just that, similar to Isaiah chapter 6 and Revelation chapters 4 and 5, where, and other places in the Bible, where the holiness of God is expressed, as we do in our hymn book, holy, holy, holy. And the purpose of that was the significance, how holy he is, that we can't say it just once. We say it 3 times for emphasis. So is the number 666, is it 3 different digits, or is it simply a repetition to show that it falls short of God? It is man's number. But again, we can't know that, but they will. And so, anyway, that's the best I can do for you. Don't shoot the messenger. I don't know. Or go find somebody who's smarter than I am. That's probably your best bet. Go find somebody smarter than I am, and they'll tell you more than I can. So, anyway. Okay. That does it. Now, while you were thinking of prayer requests, and go ahead and start, if you're watching online, go ahead and start putting yours in the comment section. I'll be able to check on that. I've got it here in front of me. But I am going to switch out of this for a second because I need to bring up, I want to make sure that we are clear when I say this. It is December the 11th. We will meet next week for the last time this year. We will have Bible study in next week. But we will not meet the next week unless you don't have anything to do for Christmas. And then you can come up here and be by yourself here. If that's your choice. Huh? Sure. You can do that. I probably will be there on Christmas Day, unless something is odd. We won't meet the following week, because that's New Year's Day. You can show up here, but you'll be by yourself. I'm watching football that day. So, I know, But we will be back on the 8th. So we will meet next week, and not the following 2 weeks, okay? And I'll remind you of that next week, but anyway, just wanted to make that clear as I could. All right? Okay, what prayer requests do you have? I don't have any online yet, none that are coming through. Any in the room? I've got 2. Pray for Dick Smith, who is Charlie Smith's brother. He had a cancer removed from his head, but for some reason, I can't remember what the reason was. I don't know if I know the reason. They weren't able to close it up, so he's still just there exposed. And then pray for Chris Jean Cake. Pray for his mama, Lynn. Lynn Jean Cake is having her heart shocked tomorrow. I think she's an AFib, so shocking her heart back into rhythm. What else you got? Anything? Nothing, honey? Okay. Well, then let's pray, and we shall go. God, once again, we thank you for the Word. We thank you for the Bible and what it teaches us and what it points toward, the warnings that it gives, the instruction that it gives, the way that it points us to you and the way that you'd have for us. We do thank you for that. We confess we don't know everything, but we just have faith in you that the Holy Spirit, as the Holy Spirit is among us. You said that the Holy Spirit would teach us and would remind us. And so we just have faith that we know what we need to know when we need to know it. But help us to be students of it. I mean, not that we want to be lazy, but there are just some things that we still just don't know and we don't get. And help us to be okay with that if it's not within your will for us to know just yet. And that really applies not just to the things that we know in the Bible, things that we read about in the Bible, but also in life. Sometimes we just can't know why things are happening the way that they are, or why they're not happening the way that we want them to. There are mysteries in this world. So just give us the faith to accept the things that we can't understand, and help us to live out a life of faith, and to encourage people to do the same, and to be able to cry with people who are crying and rejoice with those who are rejoicing. And we thank you for the church that allows us to do that. You taught us to live out our Christian life and community, and so we thank you for Emmanuel Baptist Church and other churches that preach and teach the Word, that allow us to do that. And speaking of which, when we get back together again on Sunday, may that sharpening, that encouragement of each other, may that happen all the more. Thank you for our time together tonight. We pray, we lift up those who are hurting, for Charlie's brother, for Chris's mom, and for those who have not been mentioned. We know that you know them, and we take comfort in that. So may your perfect will be done. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, thank you all. We will see y'all. Oh, hold on, just a couple of things as you're leaving. Pray for Ruby. I don't know, Bouquet, is that her last name? Ruby, who comes with Gene Tootin on Sundays. Pray for her. Doesn't really give a reason, but doesn't need to. So be in prayer for her as you leave. All right.